And here we go. I know my guest is really liking the music there. I can hear now. Welcome to the Rude Dog Show. This is Rudy Reyes. That was last year's opener. I don't have I do have a new opener, but I obviously grabbed the last year's opener. Speaking of opener, welcome to my right or to my left, depending on what side of the screen that you're on or the device you're looking at. I am Rudy Reyes, host and founder, owner, talent, producer, well, you name it. Anyway, I'm here on TheRudeDogShow.com. Welcome by Mr. OJ McDuffie, known as AKA Juice. Good morning, OJ. How are you?
What's up, Rude Dog?
Hey, man. You know, the usual suspect, always busy, always on the road, not on the prowl. At least maybe not today. And we'll wait and see what Sunday brings, because that could be a whole nother ball game. Speaking of ball games, there's a lot of ball games going on and a lot of pre-playoff conversations as well. And of course, nevertheless, the hat kind of indicates what we're going to talk about after all. That is the Miami Dolphins, who stand at 8-3 in the AFC East. The big dogs, speaking of dogs, on the East Coast, in the AFC East, there isn't anyone really close, to be perfectly honest with you. OJ, before we get into the season, and I had a lot of time to really kind of navigate what your past looks like being drafted, and man, it's kind of interesting because I look at your career. I think to myself, man, does anybody know who OJ McDuffie is? I mean, you're drafted in the first round. You're 25th overall in the '93 NFL draft, and that's when everything was bigger. Hair was bigger, clothes were bigger, jewelry was bigger.
Yeah, everything.
Of course, everything was bigger, along with some of the bodies that entered the NFL. And you were no exception to that rule, weighing in at 5'10 and 194, which for a wide receiver is actually a very respectable number when you look at the physicality coming out of Penn State. Certainly someone to contend with. Certainly, obviously the Dolphins were looking at you. Give the listeners and viewers a little bit more of a synopsis of what it was like in your first NFL draft, and share the experiences that you had along the way prior to that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, man. Playing at Penn State, as you mentioned, was was awesome. It really was, and I think what Penn State did for me was it prepared me for the NFL at all levels, and honestly, with any team. The fact that I was able to go out there and catch some amazing passes, especially my last year from Kerry Collins. But knowing Penn State, we're also a team that ran the ball a lot, so it also made me well-rounded as a blocking receiver, which is that was a must at Penn State. And then of course I returned punts and kicks, so I tried to do anything and everything I could do to help my team out. And there was a lot asked of me, and I hope I came through for them. I think the fact that the Dolphins took me, they thought that they got a guy that could go out there and do multiple things for them. And that's what I ended up doing when I got drafted by the Dolphins in April of '93 with the 25th overall pick.
I think you did as well. I think you did a great job. And what really kind of opens up the segue into more things that a player can do on the field and the types of differentiations in positions that they play give scouts a real deeper understanding as to how much of a dual threat type of wide receiver you can be, whether it's kick returns, whether it's blocking on the outside, blocking on the inside, maybe block and move, headed on a slant route, or whatever the case might be. It shows you're multi-talented in various positions, all receiving, of course, and some blocking, but still giving them an idea. So, you know what? He fits into our scheme really well. I think the Dolphins found a gem in you. Now, career-wise, when we talk about the beginning towards the end, you had 415 receptions, almost 5,100 yards, 29 touchdowns, and you averaged about 12 relatively throughout any given season, which is extremely good, and only 6 fumbles. So with those numbers, clearly at any point post-career, did the Dolphins ever reach out to you and say, hey, can you train or wide receivers? Can you have conversations with them? Can you come in the locker room and give them something, anything?
No, you know what? And they did not. I mean, honestly, the history of these Dolphins. We've had so many coaches and coaching changes, and we finally got the best coach you could ask for. After Don Shula, and Mike McDaniel, and none of them actually have. And you know what? And they're all the guys they bring in there are way more qualified than I would be. I'm more suited for the high school level. I can go there and coach those guys up and give them the knowledge that I have, and keep those guys, and show those guys the bigger picture. And it's so funny because I actually helped a high school team out, and I coached special teams, and it was amazing how far back they were when it came to schemes and philosophies and different things. And I absolutely enjoyed it. But other than that, I would not want to coach for anything. Definitely not in college, where you've got to coach, you got to recruit, you got to worry about kids going to class, you got to worry about some of the girlfriends they might have. You got so many things you have to worry about that I was not willing to give up all that time to do so. And in the pro game, I know we were there so long. Every day seemed like we were there for 8 or 9 hours. And I know all my coaches were there before I got there, and I know they were there after I left. So I'm like, you know what? That's not for me either. So I'm just became a super fan afterwards, working for the team on the alumni advisory board, doing the podcast, doing the pre and post game show, and that was plenty enough for me to be involved with my favorite team.
Well, there you go. Your favorite team is the one who drafted you, and we can always think about the alma maters and the ones that really attributed to what we were able to show others. Being off the field, the things you got involved with while you were off the field, when you were with the Dolphins, all the constructive building within the community, helping kind of gather. Now, I've been to Miami once, and that was for the Super Bowl. I don't know if you were in attendance there or not, but
I don't go to Super Bowls unless my team's in it. So I'll be in Vegas this year. Put it that way.
Well, you and me both. I'll be in Vegas as well. We'll see what happens. There's still plenty of football left to be played. I mean, the Dolphins rolled over the Raiders a couple of weeks ago. They took care of the Jets handily. And look, I don't necessarily underestimate any team's opponents, because any given Sunday, as you know, the old adage or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
There's a lot of things to like about this Miami Dolphins team. You have Tyreek Hill, who participates in races quite often. Is still known as Cheetah, the guy who's still seriously fast and just diabolically good at running routes and just gaining that type of separation. A lot of things surrounding him prior to landing with the Dolphins, and his indiscretions as such. However, he has turned out to be some of the best talent there is on that Dolphins roster, from a wide receiver slash maybe like an option back, a slant on the outside, or maybe even a back on the outside. I mean, he's a multi-threat kind of guy, which you can relate to. What are the things you like to see from Tyreek Hill when he has that ball in his hands?
I love everything about Tyreek, and you mentioned it, man. Whatever was going on in his past, he's there's a lot of guys that got things that go on in their past, and I think that he's a guy that's grown up and matured from some of the things that have happened to him. But one thing I do know about him is that the guy is amazing in the community. I mean, he's nonstop out there embracing the South Florida people and community. And that's been great, because anytime you come in as a high profile, anybody, first round pick, or if you come in as a free agent, it's important that you ingratiate yourself with the guys and the people that are in this community that are there to cheer you on. And he's done all of that and then some. As a player, I don't think there's anybody that works harder than Tyreek Hill does, on and off the field. And I think that's important. When your number one guy is out there putting in that work, how can the number 2 or 3 guy not put in work? That's what really happened. You see some superstars that are so good that they just go through the motions, show up on Sunday, and put up big numbers. That's Tyreek could do that if he wanted to, but that's not how he rolls. So when you go out there and watch him in practice, this guy he puts in so much work, so much effort. And then you got guys like Jalen Waddle that feed off of that. And you got other guys on that roster, the Craycrafts and the Barrios and the Wilsons. All those guys, they feed off of what Tyreek does. And so if he can't slack, How the hell can anybody else slack? So that's what I love most about him. He's a rare talent in terms of wide receiver that is not only fast, he's quick, he's tough, he blocks, he goes over the middle, and he uplifts his teammates. He's never like dogging anybody or down on anybody. He's always positive about, we got the next play, we got the next series or whatever it might be. So he's the ideal guy in your locker room when it comes to, NFL superstars that are just great talents, but also great teammates.
Well, one of those things. Speaking of teammates, there was a serious loss last game against New York, and this Jalen Phillips is a guy who is from my neck of the woods. He grew up where I grew up at, and it's not an easy place to grow up at. I can rest assured anyone who's ever been in the Inland Empire in California, Southern California, that this is not an easy place to grow up. Unfortunately, he ended up being injured, out for the season. And of course, he appreciates all the support from all the fans, especially the Miami Dolphins, who he's one of the I'm not going to say not a generational talent, but he still has room for improvement, which he'll find in the offseason along with the recovery process as well. But Jalen Phillips is out for the remainder of the season. It's sad to hear about it. You hate to hear about news like this. Guys getting injured, as they're trying to make a playoff run. And I understand another old adage of being the next man up. Who is the next man up to Jalen Phillips when he's obviously going to be recovering in a bed or maybe on some crutches headed into postseason?
I'm gonna tell you what. Jalen Phillips is my absolute favorite player on the football team. We talked a lot about what Tyreek does. This guy, Jalen Phillips, being a former player for University of Miami, being in this community and knowing this community, he's been incredible. I just everything about him, man. We had him on our podcast, The Fish Tank, with my co-host Seth Levitt, and we left that recording, Rudy, like, wow, this young guy gets it. He is such an incredible talent, but an incredible human being, super smart, super athletic, obviously, but he puts in that work as well. And it's so funny because usually for me, every year I got a favorite wide receiver. That's my favorite player on the Dolphin team. Jalen Phillips is my favorite guy on the Miami Dolphins. Everything about him I absolutely love. And he's going to be a huge loss for us. And even thinking about trying to replace him isn't working. You talk about a guy that was coming into his own and making plays and was balling. As he said on Hard Knocks, he was balling. He was hooping out there. He was feeling it out there. And man, he does that week in, week out. And we saw this coming along the last couple of years where, he was almost there. He was this close to making a sack. He was this close to making a tackle for loss. And now he's getting home, and then we lose him, in the Meadowlands, on that surface. Just an incredible loss for us. And I know some guys that are going to come in and try to fill that void, but he's such a super talent. It's impossible to fill that void. But I do expect Van Ginkel. I do expect Agba. I expect now we got Jason Pierre-Paul coming in. I do expect those guys to try to share that load and try to make up what we lose with Jalen Phillips.
Yeah, I do as well. And it's really sad to know that this guy is just the next up and coming guy, and then to lose him in an untimely fashion. Now, look, MetLife, he's not the first victim of the horrible ground conditions there at MetLife. I think there are 3 other players on top of him who have been injured on that completely awful turf there, and what they're going to do to maintain any type of integrity on it moving forward into the remainder of the season, much less the offseason, is another story for another podcast. But it's just absolutely horrible. I wouldn't want to play on that, to be honest with you. And of course, they have to change cleats. The cleat style is different. The actual base of the shoe has to be different. The spikes have to be different. There's just so many different moving parts in order to play on that type of turf. So he will be sorely missed by the Dolphins. He'll be sorely missed in his position. You mentioned Jason Pierre-Paul, who I think is a really good fit. He's fit basically everywhere he's went to. So when you look at his body of work, does he make up for the ground that will not be had by Jalen Phillips?
I think it's going to be a collaborative effort. I really do. It's going to be certain situations. Emmanuel Ogbah came in when JP went out last week, and he had a heck of a game. I think he had a sack and a half in that game. Van Ginkel's been somebody we all love down here that just been – he's been able to play all over the field and make plays for us. And we expect JPP to be able to go out there and fit right in as well. Vic Fangio on that defense, he allows those guys that freedom to go out there and get after pass rushers. And when you have an offense that's scoring points, it forces the team to throw the ball a lot more. And I know JPP still has that motor. He still has that edge. And I know that when you're sitting at home, you have that hunger as well. So the fact that he is back home, a South Florida native, he's super excited to be here. And I hope he gets, acclimated and in the mix really, really soon for us. So I think no matter what, like I said, it's hard to replace all that, that Jalen Phillips does, because he is a hell of a run stopper. He makes tackles 15 yards to 20 yards down the field. And of course, he gets after quarterbacks. But I think if all these guys can go in there and do their part, do their role, we can replace him with 3 guys. That's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Fangio is going to have to be a little bit more creative, especially on those blitz packages, what those look like, how frequent those are actually used, and to make sure that the linebackers rotate in and out in order to create maximum pressure, especially on 3rd and shorts, or maybe even 4th and goals and things of that nature. So I look for Fangio to really mix it up upcoming, especially against the Washington Commanders, who have been less than stellar. I think Howell's the 2nd or 1st most sacked quarterback in the NFL this season. And certainly this is not going to be a walk-on, type of contest, because they have shown the propensity to move the ball late in the game, to make those absolutely dime throws from Sam Howell. But I like the Dolphins in this matchup. If there was a winning score, I would have to say Dolphins 24 to, 14. It's going to be a wax on, wax off type of situation between the Dolphins and Commanders. What do you see in this game? And, not only will the final score be, but what are the matchups you are looking for?
Well, I tell you what, this team has been playing really well on the defensive side of the football. The Dolphins have, and I love that about them. And they let's be honest. I mean, the Commanders have struggled. They've struggled stopping offenses, and our offense is pretty dynamic. Weather shouldn't be too bad, so we should be able to run pretty much everything we want to run. But no matter what, you said it best, man. You said it earlier in the show. It's any given Sunday. These guys are at home. They got a lot of people that are fighting for their NFL lives and jobs. Del Rio gets fired a little bit ago. I know that Eric Bieniemy on the OC he's a good friend of mine. I know they're trying to do their part as an offense. So I expect those guys to give us their best shot. They really do. And if we can stop that pass game and and get after them on the defensive front, I think we should be great. But one thing we have to do is we have to start doing things well early in games as an offense. If we do things early in games and force them to play catch up, then that plays into our hands of what we want to do as a pass rushing group, as a front seven. Our front seven, and unfortunately minus JP, our front seven's been spectacular. Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealers, Bradley Chubb, and our linebackers with Long and Baker have been incredible. But then we got 2 of the best corners in the game, probably in my opinion, the best combo. We talk about Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, and of course you can't not talk about Javon Holland at their 99-yard Black Friday Hail Mary return. So the defense is stellar, but we have to, as an offense, stop turning the ball over. Our team is -5 when it comes to the turnover ratio, which is unheard of for a team that'd be 8-3 at this point to be losing that battle. And if we can't continue to do that, especially moving into the month of December, December is all they remember is what you do in December, Rudy.
Right.
That's what famous quote from my coach Robert Ford. And so now's the time to start putting everything together and be peaking right now. Coach McDaniel talks about all the time. He didn't want to be peaking in September. He wanted to be peaking in December, and that's what his team needs to start doing. And that starts by getting off to a fast start offensively and getting a lot of stops early defensively.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's about the fluidity of the game. And if the Dolphins kids score early and often or with every possession, whether it's 3 or 7, it's going to be a long day for the Washington Commanders defensively to stop Tua, who has came back basically with a vengeance after all the concussions and all the questions about whether or not he's going to play. And to be honest with you, just that kind of competitive spirit that he possesses didn't make me believe, after multiple conversations that I've heard, multiple interviews that I've heard with him being the one saying, you know what, I'm just going to come out and do my best and do my thing. He is humbled by everything that had transpired last year. That's rolling into what we're looking at this year. The last game against the Jets, he had almost 250 yards, a touchdown, but he did throw 2 picks. but able to overcome that, as he was 21 out of 30. What does Tua have to do to cut down on those interceptions? Because those will kill you, just like turnovers deep in your own side of the field can come back to haunt you, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown.
Yeah, I think Tua knows it. He knows that his 2 interceptions were late and outside. Which I don't care how big or strong your arm is, late and outside is always going to lead to bad results. And I think that was one of the problems when it came to his turnovers the last game. These guys, I mean, he's so smart, Rudy. It's fun to watch him work and go through his progressions. But when things break down a little bit, at times he makes a couple bad decisions. But I'm telling you, the way things are schemed up, the way he has the knowledge of this offense between he and Mike McDaniel, and then when you have a Jalen Waddle, when you have a Tyreek Hill, and you have a running game now with Raheem Mostert and even Jeff Wilson, it makes his job easier, even though obviously quarterback is the hardest position in sports. So I think the bottom line is this: once he makes his reads, he's really great at it. But if he's got something late, I just prefer he throw it away and then we tee it up another time.
Yeah, exactly. You have to follow your check downs. Somebody told me one time, if it's not a check down, it's a throw out. Just don't try to force balls in any given double coverage, or, you had mentioned the outside where those interceptions occur. I think if he keeps it in the middle of the field, it clearly on short yardage situations, moving the chains to get yourself in a potential field goal game winning situation, then yes, I can see that happening. But otherwise, just worth the middle of the field, he'll find himself in a lot better positioning field wise, along with turning those would be interceptions into big gains.
Right.
Instead. But he has a 1-2 punch in Raheem Mostert, who came over from San Francisco with his first year in Miami, 20 carries, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A guy that, to me, looks like an all-around complement back to Tyreek Hill, because they're very diverse. They play diverse roles where they came from. They're playing diverse roles now, and I really think that Raheem kind of feeds off of what Tyreek gives him.
He really does. I mean, if we can run the ball, I mean, they both love each other. Put it that way. All right. So you think about it as an offense. If you've got an offense that can run the football, somebody's got to bring somebody down the box. You've got one-on-ones with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's an ideal situation. And vice versa. If they want to play a cover shell, to take away Tyreek or Jalen Waddle, those guys, then you've got an opportunity to go out there and run the football. And I think that's what we've been able to do really, really well against a really good Jets defense on Friday. I thought that, man, we controlled that line of scrimmage versus some guys that have been beating some people down. And I love the physicality. And it really starts with those guys up front. We always talk about the skill guys, but none of this gets done. Tua doesn't get his job done. Mostert doesn't get his job done. Tyreek doesn't get his job done unless you have your Teron Armstead, unless you have your Connor Williams in the middle. And another guy, Austin Jackson, a former first-round pick for us, he's been playing his butt off. And, so having those guys, and the guys been in and out of the line, we've had 10 or 12 linemen play this year. And still we're sitting there at 8-3 and been able to move the ball down the field. I think we have the most yards in the league per game and things like that. So I just think that it starts up front, but these guys are all complementary to each other. It is complementary football on the offensive side of the football. Offensive line, quarterback that knows what he's doing, the running backs that know what they're doing, and wide receivers that can get open. So it works out well for us for the Miami Dolphins.
No, I definitely do. Against New York, there was almost 400 total yards between passing and rushing, 228 in passing, 167 in rushing, and averaging almost 6 yards per play. That's nuts. Almost complimentary of what you see guys like George Kittle for the 49ers or CMC for the 49ers, a similar ground and pound with option plays that take a wide receiver. And you see that all over the NFL, right? I mean, you've seen it in Jacksonville. You see it everywhere. Who is the biggest competitor to the AFC East leading Miami Dolphins within the AFC division?
Well, man, you got to always give the Chiefs their credit. They're that good. We see Baltimore coming up in Baltimore. You guys look at the teams that are still out there, getting it done week in, week out, doing it different types of ways. I think the best teams are the teams that can win multiple ways. If if the run game's not working, the pass game's there. If the pass game's not working, then the run game is there. Can your defense stop the run, or can your defense stop a team that passes well? And those two teams do all that really well. So we've already played the Chiefs. Obviously, we lost to them in Germany. We got the Baltimore. I said I was about to say the Colts, Baltimore Colts. Damn, I'm old. We got the Ravens coming up, and that's another great test. Everybody had talked about the Dolphins not being able to play against good teams. All right. So we lose to Buffalo, we lose to Philadelphia, we lose to the Chiefs. Now we're playing against some teams like, when you get a Baltimore team, how do we play against those guys in their place? And that's going to be a big test for us. But I'm going to tell you what, they're not even thinking about Baltimore right now. They are so locked in with extra days of work for the Commanders. Playing on that Friday helps for a lot of reasons. You get more work in film study and preparation. You get guys rested a little bit. And then you got guys that are hungry to go out there and play. I hated playing a game on Sunday and have to wait another week to play another game. It's not basketball or hockey or baseball where you can pick it back up the next day and play again, especially if you have a bad taste in your mouth. Football, you have to wait a week, sometimes 4 days, which is, we'll talk about, that's a different story, the Thursday games. But at the same time, though, man, I think that this team will be hungry, and all they think about is getting the 1-0 every week. And I know it's cliche as well, but that's the most important thing. You can never look ahead. All you can do is now, especially with this team now sitting at 8-3, all they got to do is look forward. They don't have to look in the rearview mirror right now. Just handle your business and let things take care of themselves. If you handle your business, everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you know what? You were talking about complementary football and offense leads to great defense. And, it's obviously very different in the NBA. But when you look at the NFL, the Steelers, after firing Matt Canada, found a way to win with a co-offensive coordination between Eddie Faulkner as well as Chris Sullivan. And so it kind of plays to the role of, if it's not good in the air, try the ground. If it's not good in the ground, try in the air, to diversify your play calling so that way it gives you a better chance to win, gives you better field position, and overall just to play much better game. The Steelers broke 400 yards for the first time in 50 seasons. So, teams like that that are trying to be the up-and-comer, focus on one thing at a time, one down at a time, one game at a time. And of course, when you look at the postseason, and the Dolphins could really attest to this, like any other team in the NFL, all bets are off when you are in the playoffs, because the playoffs are a completely different animal altogether. It may be the same fur, maybe the same height, the same length, but it's still a different animal. And I think that the Miami Dolphins are certainly one of those teams that people really need to keep an eye on. Especially and I'm not going to say the AFC East, because clearly we see Buffalo losing against a team they shouldn't have lost against. But again, a very good Philadelphia Eagles team with a tush push will get you every single time. But more comfort when you go, I guess, if you're in Philadelphia with the whole tush push thing. I've always thought of that as being illegal formation, but I digress. Clearly, it's not going to work that way.
There are a lot of teams that played against them too, Rudy. They hope they make that an illegal formation. I promise you that.
Hopefully so. Look, I'm very objective, and the way that I look at it is this: if you're going to put something like that together, it shouldn't be a football team, and to me, that's illegal formation. Look, I understand an offset line. Give me another guard. Give me another tackle on the right hand or left hand sides, respectfully, and do something with that, but not a tush push to get in the end zone.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what teams need to do, Rudy, is they need to keep them out of 3rd and short and 4th and short. Period. It's like, you see teams score some of these things. They're like, well, you ran a score up. No, you stop us. We got to figure out a way to keep them in 3rd and 5 or 4th and 5. You get the 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. I mean, that's on you. That's your fault. And, so I the play's been around forever. The push obviously has just been allowed recently.
Right.
And I think that in order to stop it, don't put them in those great situations that they enjoy. And this, hell, you got a team that'll do that on their own 25, maybe. They're so confident in pulling that off. Figure out a way to stop it, man. But I honestly hope they do not outlaw, because make people learn how to stop it. Period. Like anything else, make people learn how to stop it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Always in the offseason, you have those conversations between owners and coaches and Roger Goodell saying, well, we need to look at the competition committee and find out if that's fair competition to be able to put up a prevent D to stop the tush push. It's almost like a goal line stance
Yeah.
every single time you get in the tush push situation.
Well, the reason people hate it though is because they can't replicate it. If they could do it, if other teams could do it, they would be doing it too, but they can't. Nobody does it like Philly does, and that's their gripe right there.
Yeah, exactly right. And especially when you look at the Philly cheesesteak, going in the end zone to to Nick Foles in the
Yeah,
end zone.
yeah, for sure.
I don't know. There's just some odd stuff going on. But anyway, so moving forward, there are a few games that I would be a concern to me if I were the Miami Dolphins. First of all, it would be the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
When I say worry, I mean physically at the line of scrimmage, downfield. Daron Bland for the Cowboys is playing extremely well. Dak Prescott's playing some of his best football, keeping the turnovers to a very minimum. You have CD Lamb in the outside. He can basically kill you from anywhere. The Cowboys are on a roll. I think that's a game to really be concerned with. And then the following game between Baltimore, that's going to be a smackdown, drag out, physical, because coming from a Steelers fan, coming from a guy who's covered the Steelers for 9 almost 10 years now, very physical-ish type of game from Baltimore. Dolphins really have to match the momentum. They're going to have to match the physicality. They're going to have to match them on every single down. And if you don't have a QB spy on Lamar Jackson, you are sleeping at the wheel, and you're going to get a DUI because he's going to pass you up every single chance he gets.
Yeah. We've had
So,
some
game. Which game's difficult, the most difficult for you, or more daunting between the Cowboys and Ravens?
Well, I mean, they're both going to be tough challenges. They really are. I mean, they're both great teams playing at a high level right now. Cowboys, I mean, if it wasn't for the Eagles in their division, they'd be, that team you're talking about. And, in the NFC East, Baltimore, of course, I mean, just been solid all year long. And with a new offense, and of course, Lamar getting a hell of a deal and still coming in here and playing lights out. They're all going to be tough. I think the toughest one probably will be Baltimore because it's on the road, and we've had some trouble on the road. Or 3 losses are all on the road, and that's been a challenge for us, especially with all the motions and shifts and the snap counts that we deal with. And we do so much with those things that keep teams off balance that if you get a chance to get on the road and you have to go to silent count, it doesn't mesh or gel as well sometimes. So I think that's going to be a tough one. Even Dallas down here is going to be there's going to be a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans here. It can still be loud at home, but I mean, going to Baltimore in whatever weather it could be, I know. I mean, I'm from Cleveland. I think we almost had 2 inches of snow. Did you get snow? You in Pittsburgh area right now?
No, I'm actually in California.
Oh, you look at you.
We don't get no snow out here.
Look at you living it up out west. You got up early for me. I appreciate that, man.
No,
but yeah, you just never know what the weather's going to be like in those situations. And then we talked about it earlier, though, Rudy. If the weather's bad, it plays in the hands of a good defense, and it plays into the hands of an offense that can run the football. So I think that's where we're trying to get to. So obviously, we're talking about, a few games down the road, Commanders we have and the Titans we have. And then, of course, we got the Jets here. But that Baltimore game is probably a game that a lot of people are looking at to see if the Dolphins can go out there and play another physical game. We answered that question with the Jets because that was the question. Can Dolphins play against a physical team? Philly was physical against us. Buffalo was physical against us. KC was pretty physical against us. The Jets defense is absolutely physical, and we went out there and handled them. So can we continue that trend? We're going to have to when we go up against both of those teams, Baltimore and the Cowboys. So they're both very physical teams.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's owning the line of scrimmage, making sure that there's any type of separation that can be had. And, of course, competitive advantages certainly plays a role in regards to, what the formation looks like, calling timeouts in a way that allows for you to match up guys accordingly, putting your shifts in. I'm more worried about what Lamar Jackson does outside of the pocket. If I was Miami, if I was secondary and secondary coach, and of course Fangio's going to have to do something better. I mean, I understand that they're not going to have the at-home feeling Is there a home? Is there a home field advantage? Is there such a thing? Will there ever be such a thing? And if there is it going to count when the Cowboys visit Miami, and or is it more of a benefit for the Ravens when the Dolphins visit there?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. I mean, we talked a little bit about it there. The Ravens definitely will have a home field advantage. We do have a lot of fans in the DMV area, and I'm happy about that. We will have a lot of Dolphin fans there in that Baltimore game. Cowboys, they travel everywhere, so we know there are going to be a lot of Cowboy fans here. Home field advantage for us usually happens in September when it's warm out. No matter how good your team is, how physical your team is, we're going to wear you down. It's going to be Cramp City. I promise you that. It's dehydration is coming for the fans that are sitting there and the players that are out there on the field. So when it comes to you think about the Dallas game, I think it's Christmas Eve. It's gonna be nice, beautiful weather here. It's gonna be like playing inside of AT&T Stadium, whatever their stadium is in Dallas, indoor like climate. It's gonna be fun for those guys. Not a big deal for them. So the home field advantage for us usually is the weather, but I think our crowd has been so pumped up, and the more this team wins, the more the city gets behind them. I just implore all of our fans, stop selling your tickets to opposing teams. We need to keep them out of our stadium. Let them come and tailgate, but not come in. That's fine with me. So the home field advantage for us for that game is going to be tough for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of funny you should mention that because when I was going to go to LA, because I work for Sirius XM, and I was headed down that direction that very weekend, I thought to myself, man, what would it take? And so I seen all these Rams fans selling their tickets. I thought to myself, do they really want a black and gold invasion? And you know what? Ultimately, whether I win or not, that's exactly what it was. Because the Steelers fans are always there. They're everywhere, just like fans across the NFL landscape. They're going to be there regardless. And when you say Cowboys fans, they were very rabid in Ventura, California, which is not too far away from me. Well, I mean, it's far depending on if you like driving 3 or 4 hours. But we're talking rabid fans, and they're going to be there no matter what. But I agree with you. If you can keep the opposing team's fans, you can keep those fans out of your players' heads and out of their helmets. You know what I mean?
Well, Rudy, think about this too. When that schedule comes out in April or May, whenever it comes out, and you see your team is playing in Miami or in LA, who's not booking flights and getting tickets right away? Especially if you're from some of these cold weather places this time of year. If it's December and I'm from Pittsburgh, if my team is playing in Miami, man, that's Christmas present right there, right away. Let's go. So yeah, I get it. I understand they want to come and enjoy our weather. We just want to make sure they leave with an L when they get the weather. We don't mind them taking our son and going to the beaches and all that stuff. Just make sure when you go home, you're not in a good mood. That's all we care
about. Funny thing is that I would always love to go to Pittsburgh when it is snowing. I know I'm odd.
Yeah, enjoy that. Enjoy it. Go ahead. I did that all my life until I came to Miami. But go ahead. If that's what you want, Rudy, do your thing.
I'll take it. I'll take it all day long and twice on Sunday. I don't care. Fly out of one and catch another flight to a later game somewhere else. Maybe even Miami. I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
Hey, OJ, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on to the Rude Dog Show. Where can everybody find you? What are you currently doing now where people can really get involved in what you're doing while you're watching your team and being a super fan goes during the season?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I do the podcast with my man Seth Levitt. It's called The Fish Tank. Dolphin Tales from the Deep. It's we're with the Miami Dolphins. Our studio is right inside our practice facility, and we also, on iHeartRadio. So anywhere you get your podcast, you can find all of our stories. We just dropped an episode with Olivier Vernon yesterday, and that was a great episode. I actually reached out to him today to reach out to Jalen Phillips. They both suffered Achilles injuries kind of the same way. They both went to the University of Miami, and I'd love for those two to connect because I know what how hard it is to come back from something like that. And then I do the pregame show for them on iHeartRadio, and I also do the postgame show for them on iHeartRadio. And then I'm a part of their alumni advisory board. So if you come to the stadium or anywhere in Miami, I'm still trying to stay relevant, Rudy. You got to stay relevant, man. That's what I'm trying to do, brother.
That's it. That's really what it's about. The end of the day, I think everybody's fighting for that space, that impersonal space,
Right.
where they can still stay relevant. People know who they are. But again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody can go follow me at Rudy at Rude Dog Reyes on Twitter. You can go to TheRudeDogShow.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere social media is had, which I think is everywhere on any device at any given time whatsoever. Just don't lose sleep over it. Thanks, OJ. I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely do this again soon.
I appreciate you having me on, man.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, brother.
Thanks.